You know that feeling when you realize your entire professional existence is worth less to your boss than a pack of screws at a hardware store? That was me last Tuesday. I'm Scott Williams, 58 years old, and I've been breaking my back for TechFlow Solutions for 15 years. 15 years. I've missed my daughter Jennifer's college graduation rehearsal to fix operational charts that Brian Patterson screwed up because he thought safety protocols were suggestions. I've smoothed over client calls where Brian promised equipment deliveries that don't exist in this dimension or the next. I've essentially been the grease keeping this rusty machine from seizing up since the Bush administration. And what was the grand celebration? A mandatory 2 p.m. gathering in the break room that permanently smells like microwave fish and broken dreams. Brian Patterson, the deputy director of Looking Important, tapped a plastic spoon against his energy drink can to get everyone's attention. He was wearing that gray suit he thinks makes him look like a tech executive, but actually makes him look like a car salesman who peaked in college. "All right, team, gather around," Brian announced, flashing that smile that never reaches his calculating eyes. "Today is a big day. We're celebrating a milestone. Scott here has been with us for 15 years. There was scattered applause, mostly from the junior analysts I'd trained and from Ashley Martinez, my mentee, who looked like she wanted to throw her laptop at Brian's head on my behalf. 15 years, Brian continued, putting his hand on my shoulder like we were old buddies. I tensed up. That's dedication. That's the kind of old-school work ethic we need more of around here. And to show our appreciation for everything you do, Scott, keeping the operations running smooth, right? We got you a little something." He reached into his jacket pocket. I wasn't expecting a Rolex. I wasn't even expecting a bonus, because Brian had been crying poverty about the department budget for 6 months. But I expected dignity. Maybe a plaque, a handwritten note from management. He handed me a small orange envelope. I opened it. It was a Home Depot gift card. I looked at the back. Written in Sharpie in the amount box, $25. $25. That's $167 per year of service. I looked up at Brian. He was beaming, waiting for me to perform gratitude like a trained SEAL. "Spend it all in one place," he chuckled, looking around the room for laughter. Nobody laughed. Even the HR rep was studying her shoes. "Thanks, Brian," I said. My voice was steady, but inside a bridge was burning. A massive suspension bridge made of patience was collapsing into a river of gasoline. "Only the best for our MVP," he said, slapping my back before diving toward the sheet cake. Generic vanilla with "Congratulations, Scott," written in runny blue icing. I walked back to my desk, gift card burning a hole in my pocket. I didn't explode. I didn't flip a table. I'm an operations manager. We don't make messes, we clean them up. But as I sat down, an email notification flashed on my screen. It was a company-wide blast. Subject: Important announcement, acquisition news. TechFlow Solutions was being acquired by Apex Dynamics, a massive parent company. The email stated that the transition team, led by a CEO named Lance Cooper, would be on site starting next week to evaluate operational efficiency and leadership redundancy. I looked at the $25 card next to my keyboard. Then I looked at the email. Brian came strolling past my cubicle, a piece of cake on a paper plate in one hand, his phone in the other. "Big news, Scott. Don't worry, I'll handle the transition. You just keep doing what you do. Handle the paperwork and let me focus on the big picture with the new overlords." "Of course, Brian," I said. "I'll keep everything organized." He didn't hear the tone. He never does. He thinks I'm office equipment, reliable, automatic, and incapable of recording conversations. He's wrong. I opened my locked drawer. Inside wasn't snacks or gym clothes. It was a hard drive and a thick binder labeled operational documentation. See, for 15 years, Brian has been playing fast and loose with company resources. Client dinners that were actually family vacations charged to his corporate card. Consulting fees paid to his brother-in-law's company for digital transformation, work that never happened. Executive office upgrades totaling $45,000 last quarter while he denied our request for safety equipment updates. Most importantly, Brian had been skipping mandatory equipment inspections to save money, creating potential OSHA violations that could shut us down and cost millions in fines. I'd saved every invoice, every contradictory email, every safety report he'd ignored. My military training taught me one thing: document everything, trust, but verify. I picked up the Home Depot card. $25, I whispered to the empty air. I swiveled to my computer. I didn't open my current project. I opened a new folder and titled it Transition Documentation, Safety and Compliance Review. Then I started copying files. Brian thinks he bought my loyalty for 25 bucks. What he actually bought was front row seats to his own court-martial. The new CEO, Lance Cooper, has a reputation for cutting dead weight and fixing operational problems. Brian is about to find out just how much dead weight he really is. The game is on, and I'm not playing for gift cards anymore. The office energy shifted overnight. Monday morning smelled like fear and industrial floor cleaner. With Lance Cooper and the Apex Dynamics transition team arriving in 3 days, Brian had entered full panic mode. Suddenly, things that hadn't mattered for years were emergencies. The broken safety equipment in the warehouse was mysteriously getting attention. The overdue equipment inspections Brian had been postponing were now priority items. He was running around the office with the desperate energy of a man who forgot to study for a final exam that determines whether he keeps his mortgage. "Scott!" he barked at 8:15 a.m., looming over my desk. He smelled like aggressive cologne and anxiety sweat. "I need you to pull the Q3 and Q4 operational reports. We need to build a presentation deck, something that screams world-class efficiency." "We have the reports, Brian," I said, not looking up from my email. "They're in the shared drive. The ones showing we're 20% over budget on equipment maintenance because of those deferred inspections you authorized." He twitched. "Right, about that. We need to massage the narrative. The new CEO, Cooper, he's a numbers guy, but he doesn't know the context. I need you to rework the slides. Put the equipment overages under preventive maintenance expansion or facility modernization." I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "You want me to reclassify safety violations as improvement investments?" "It's all part of the same operational bucket, Scott," he laughed nervously. "Don't get bogged down in accounting details. Just make it look green. I need that deck by tomorrow morning. I have a vision meeting with Cooper's advanced team." "Sure, Brian," I said. "I'll get right on that." I didn't say no. You never say no to a man like Brian when he's panicking. You say yes, then document the request. I spent the rest of the day building 2 slide decks. Deck A was the truth. It showed the delayed maintenance, the safety violations, the vendor overpayments to companies that did nothing. Deck B was Brian's fantasy, full of buzzwords like operational synergy and proactive modernization, graphs that went up and to the right for no reason other than I changed the scale to hide the problems. At 4:30 p.m., Brian marched to my desk. "Let's see it." I pulled up Deck B. He nodded, scrolling through the slides. "Perfect. See, this looks like a department that's lean and efficient." "Oh, delete that slide about the equipment delays and change the safety equipment line item to facility enhancement costs." "Brian," I said, keeping my voice level, "if we change that, it won't match the invoices in the finance system. If they won't audit the line items in the first week, Scott," he snapped, his face flushing red. "They're looking at the big picture. Stop being such a pessimist and be a team player. Just make the changes." "Copy that," I said. "I'll send the final version to your inbox." He patted my desk, leaving a smudge. "That's why you're my rock, Scott. 15 more years, right?" He waddled away to his corner office to practice his executive presence in the mirror. I saved the fraudulent Deck B and emailed it to him, but then I did something else. I went into the file metadata and took a screenshot showing exactly when the changes were made and by whom. Me, but under his direct order, which I had him confirm via Slack message 5 minutes prior. Then I opened the shared folder the parent company had set up for audit preparation. As senior operations manager, I had upload access. I didn't upload Brian's fantasy deck. I uploaded the raw data files, the unedited, bleeding red Excel sheets that showed exactly where the money had gone and what safety protocols had been ignored. I named the file Q3 Q4 raw data source do not edit. XLSX and buried it in a subfolder titled Historical Archives. It was a breadcrumb. Lance Cooper is a numbers guy. Good numbers people dig. And when he digs, he's going to find that Brian's beautiful pie chart is made entirely of lies and expense reports from luxury hotels. Wednesday arrived, and with it, the Apex Dynamics team. Lance Cooper walked in like a weather front, cool, precise, and impossible to ignore. He was flanked by 2 analysts who looked like they ate spreadsheets for breakfast. Brian was vibrating at a frequency usually reserved for chihuahuas during thunderstorms. His strategy was divide and conquer. Specifically, keep me away from the new leadership so he could control the narrative. "Scott," Brian said, stopping by my desk at 9:00 a.m. He was clutching files like a shield. "About the strategy session with Cooper today. I think it's best if you sit this one out. Stay here and handle operations. We don't want too many voices confusing the message, right? Plus, someone needs to make sure nothing breaks down." "Understood, Brian," I said, putting on my best compliant employee face. "You handle the strategic vision." He looked relieved. Exactly. Oh, and if anyone asks about that delay on the Delta project, just mention that the team was adjusting to new safety protocols. We don't need to bore them with approval process details. Blame the safety protocols. Got it. An hour later, I was deep in a system report when a young man in a sharp navy suit appeared at my desk. It was one of Cooper's analysts. "Hi, I'm Troy Miller from Operations Review," he said. "Brian mentioned in the briefing that he handles all the primary workflow oversight, but I noticed your name is on literally every operational document in the system." I smiled. It was the smile of a tiger watching a gazelle limp. "Brian is very hands-on," I said smoothly. "But yes, I manage the execution details and compliance tracking. Cooper likes to get ground-level perspective. Would you mind if I shadowed you for an hour?" "I'd be honored," I said. "Pull up a chair." For the next 60 minutes, I put on a masterclass. I didn't say a single bad word about Brian. I didn't have to. I just let the work speak. "So," Troy asked, pointing to a red flag on the dashboard, "why is this safety inspection 6 weeks overdue?" "Oh," I said, pulling up the log. "I submitted the inspection request on schedule. It's been sitting in the director approval queue for 44 days, the director approval queue. That's Brian?" "Yes, he's very busy," I said, sweet as sweet tea. "He has a lot of strategic meetings." Troy frowned and made a note. "And this equipment purchase. It looks like we paid 250% above market rate for the server upgrade." "Correct," I nodded. I flagged the pricing discrepancy in 3 separate emails. Here are Brian's responses. I opened a folder labeled Vendor Overrides. Brian felt it was important to work with his preferred contractor for relationship continuity. "His preferred contractor," Troy repeated, typing faster. "The vendor happens to be owned by his brother-in-law, but I'm sure that's coincidental," I said simply. "They do good work when they show up." Troy stopped typing. He looked at me. Then he looked at Brian's glass-walled office across the room, where Brian had written innovation in giant red letters on his whiteboard. "Does he understand the operational software we use?" Troy asked quietly. I took a sip of my coffee. Brian prefers to lead through visionary inspiration rather than technical details. Troy closed his tablet. "This has been very educational. Thank you, Scott. Anytime, Troy, I'm here to serve." Later that afternoon, I walked past the conference room where Brian was standing at the head of the table, waving his arms and pointing at slides I knew contained fabricated numbers. Lance Cooper was sitting perfectly still, watching him with the expression of a mechanic who just realized the used car he's looking at has sawdust in the transmission. Then I saw Cooper look down at his phone. Troy had just sent him a message. Cooper looked up at Brian with fresh eyes. It wasn't a smile. It was the look of a commanding officer who'd just discovered his lieutenant had been filing false reports. Brian kept talking, oblivious. He thought he was charming the new boss. He didn't know that the equipment guy had just handed over the keys to the evidence locker. Thursday morning, the air in the office was thin. Cooper's team wasn't just observing anymore, they were auditing. I could hear calculators clicking from the conference room down the hall. Brian was sweating through his second shirt by 10 o'clock a.m. He called me into his office and shut the door. The blinds were drawn, which is never a good sign. "Scott, sit down," he said, pacing behind his desk. "We have a small situation. The finance team from Apex is asking for a breakdown of our consulting expenses." I knew exactly what he was talking about. "You mean the contract with Synergy Solutions?" "Right, Synergy," Brian waved his hand dismissively. "Good people. Critical work." "Brian," I said, clasping my hands in my lap, "Synergy Solutions is your brother-in-law's company. They invoice us $4,500 a month for digital optimization. We have an internal IT department. What exactly are they optimizing?" "It's high-level strategy, Scott. You wouldn't see it in the daily operations logs," he snapped, wiping his forehead with a fast food napkin. "The point is, the margins look weird. I need you to go into the expense reports for Q3 and reallocate some of those costs, spread them out, put some under training, some under equipment. Just smooth it out so it doesn't look like one big payment to my family." He was asking me to commit fraud. Plain and simple. He wanted me to launder his nepotism through the general ledger. I looked him in the eye. "I can't do that." Brian stopped pacing. "Excuse me? The expense codes are locked once the quarter closes. To change them now, I'd have to file a correction request with finance, and that automatically flags a review. If I move that money, it looks like I made the mistake. I am giving you a direct order." He slammed his hand on the desk. A bobblehead of a golfer wobbled aggressively. "Figure it out." If Cooper sees a $13,500 quarterly payment to consulting with no deliverables, he's going to ask questions I don't want to answer. I understand, I said calmly, but I won't touch historical financial data. It's against compliance protocols. Brian stared at me. He looked like he wanted to fire me on the spot, but he couldn't. He didn't know where the operational files were. He didn't know the system passwords. He didn't know how to run the equipment diagnostics without help. Fine, he hissed. I'll do it myself. I have admin access. You do, I agreed. You certainly do. He shooed me out of his office. I walked back to my desk and immediately opened my email. I drafted a message to myself, a time-stamped note detailing the conversation verbatim. 10:14 a.m. Brian requested reallocation of Synergy Solutions consulting funds. Request denied due to compliance violation and potential audit flags. Then I watched the system logs. At 10:30 a.m., a modification alert popped up. Brian was in the ledger, moving money around like a kid playing with Monopoly cash. He was clumsy. He moved $4,500 to employee education and $4,500 to equipment licensing and $4,500 to facility maintenance. What Brian didn't understand was that you can't pay an equipment licensing fee to a company registered as a consulting firm without the system throwing red flags. The vendor tax IDs didn't match. It was like trying to buy groceries with a check made out to McDonald's. I watched the compliance alert appear on the back end, a silent alarm blinking red in the finance database. I could have fixed it. I could have called finance and told them it was a coding error. That's what I would have done 2 years ago. That's what the loyal Scott would have done. Instead, I took a sip of my lukewarm coffee and let it blink. 10 minutes later, I received an email from the Apex finance lead, copied to Lance Cooper. Subject, urgent, discrepancy in Q3 ledger. Brian, we noticed manual overrides on ledger entries regarding Synergy Solutions. The vendor tax ID doesn't match the expense categories. Can you explain why these funds were moved this morning? We're pulling the original invoices now for review. I looked over the cubicle partition. Brian was staring at his screen, his face the color of old oatmeal. He looked up and caught my eye. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just raised my Home Depot card slightly like a toast and took another sip of coffee. He scrambled to type a reply. I could practically hear his brain short-circuiting. Brian was wounded, and wounded animals bite. On Friday morning, he went after the weakest link, Ashley Martinez. Ashley is 25, brilliant, and suffers from imposter syndrome. She's the kind of employee who apologizes when you bump into her. I was in the break room getting water when I heard Brian's voice booming from the hallway. He'd cornered Cooper and was gesturing wildly toward Ashley's desk. It's really a training issue, I heard Brian say, loud enough for half the floor to hear. I've been trying to get our junior staff up to speed, but the OSHA compliance update fell through the cracks. I delegated it weeks ago and it just sat there. Cooper listened, his face unreadable. An OSHA miss is serious liability, Brian. That's potential six-figure fines. I know, Brian said, playing the martyr. I'm cleaning it up now, but you know how it is. Can't micromanage everything. I walked back to my desk. Ashley was visibly shaking, tears welling up in her eyes. Scott, he never told me anything about OSHA updates. Easy there, I said softly. Don't worry. We don't panic. We respond with facts. I opened my archives and searched OSHA, found it immediately. 6 weeks ago, an email from legal sent to Brian marked high priority. Subject, action required. OSHA compliance update. The body explicitly stated this required director-level signature and was not to be delegated to junior staff. Brian had opened the email. Receipt confirmed. He'd never replied. He'd simply ignored it. I hit forward, addressing it to Brian and copying Cooper, legal, and Ashley. Subject, OSHA compliance. Clarification on timeline. Brian, there appears to be confusion about the OSHA compliance delay mentioned this morning. Please see the attached email thread from legal dated 6 weeks ago, explicitly stating this task required director-level signature and was not to be delegated to junior staff. According to system logs, this email was opened by you on the 12th, but no action was taken. I have the compliance forms ready for your signature now. Scott, I hit send. The mouse click sounded like a gavel banging. 3 minutes later, Brian's office door flew open. He stormed out looking for me, but stopped when he saw Cooper standing by Ashley's desk, reading something on his phone. Cooper looked up at Ashley with surprising gentleness. Don't worry about the compliance issue. It seems there was a communication breakdown at the leadership level. Brian froze in the hallway. He looked at me. I was typing away, looking incredibly busy. He marched over to my desk, lowering his voice to a hiss. "You copied the CEO. Are you out of your mind?" I finally looked up. "Ashley is family, Brian. You're just middle management. You're playing a dangerous game," he spat. "I'm not playing, Brian," I said, pointing to my monitor. "I'm following standard operating procedures. That's what you pay me for. Well, that's what you pay me $25 for." By Monday, the office atmosphere was brittle as thin ice. Cooper announced an open Q&A session for Tuesday. No topic off limits, the invite said. Brian naturally viewed transparency as a mortal threat. He called an emergency prep meeting, excluding me. But walls in our office are thin, and Brian has a voice that carries. When Cooper opens the floor, "We need softball questions," I heard him telling the other managers. "Keep the microphone away from the equipment, guys. We don't need complaints about budget allocation clogging up the strategic dialogue." He was scripting the town hall. He wanted theater, not transparency. Late that afternoon, I saw Cooper walking through the office alone, reviewing notes on his tablet. This was my moment. I waited until he passed my workstation, then stood up, holding a manila folder. "Mr. Cooper?" He stopped and turned. "Scott Williams, Senior Operations Manager." "Right, Troy speaks highly of you. Says you know where all the operational details live." "I don't bury problems, sir," I said, offering a small smile. "I just document the casualties." I held out the folder. "Brian asked us to prepare highlight materials for the transition. I thought you might want the after-action reports for context." Cooper looked at the folder, then at me. "Is this going to ruin my dinner?" "It might clarify tomorrow's Q&A session," I said. He took it. "Thank you, Scott." The next morning, Brian was manic. He was arranging chairs, checking microphones, sweating through his third shirt of the week. "Everyone remember the plan?" he whispered loudly. "Positive energy, future-focused questions." He approached my desk. "Scott, why don't you sit in the back? Maybe help with logistics." "Sure, Brian," I said. "I'll maintain situational awareness from the rear." I walked to the back of the room. I watched Cooper enter, carrying his tablet and the manila folder, placing it face down on the table. Brian started the meeting with too much energy, too many buzzwords. He introduced Cooper with a speech that was 80% adjectives and 0% substance. "And now," Brian beamed, "I'll hand it over to our new leader, Lance Cooper, for questions." The Q&A was winding down with scripted softball questions. People were eyeing the sandwich platters. "One last thing," Brian announced. "I want to say how proud I am of this team. We're a family here. We take care of our people." He scanned the room for a prop. His eyes landed on me. "Take Scott, for example. Scott just hit his 15-year anniversary. Stand up, Scott." I stayed leaning against the wall. "We recognized him just last week," Brian continued. He turned to Cooper with that politician grin. "We believe in rewarding loyalty here. Personal touches go a long way, right?" He looked back at me. "So Scott, did you ever use that Home Depot card I gave you? It was supposed to be a throwaway line." He expected me to chuckle and say, "Not yet, Brian." The room went silent. Cooper was looking at me. I pushed off from the wall and walked forward. "Actually, Brian," I said, my voice carrying clearly, "I didn't use it." Brian's smile faltered. "Oh, saving it for the right project?" I looked directly at Cooper. "I gave it to your new boss." The silence was a vacuum. "I gave it to Mr. Cooper yesterday," I continued, along with the receipt. "I told him a $25 gift card for 15 years of service perfectly illustrates this department's resource allocation priorities, especially compared to the $45,000 spent on executive office renovations last quarter." Cooper spoke without standing. He tapped the folder. "I reviewed the documentation last night, Brian. Scott is correct. The math is quite illuminating." He slid the orange Home Depot card onto the table. $25, Cooper said, "for 15 years. Is this how you value your operational assets, Brian?" Brian looked at me with pure terror. No anger anymore, just realization. I didn't smirk. I just took a sip of my coffee. "I think I'll grab one of those sandwiches now," I said, and walked out. Behind me, the murmurs exploded. I heard Brian stammering, but it was over. At 4:30 p.m., Brian walked out carrying a cardboard box, escorted by security. He looked at me one last time. I gave him a small nod. Professional courtesy. 5 minutes later, Cooper's email hit everyone's inbox. "Brian Patterson is no longer with TechFlow Solutions." Troy appeared at my desk. "Scott, Lance would like to see you in the director's office." Cooper was standing by the window. He's gone, Cooper said. I saw, I replied. I reviewed everything in that folder. It's worse than I thought, Scott. Systematic negligence with potential criminal liability. I've been trying to patch the operational holes for years, sir. Why didn't you transfer out? I believe in the mission, sir. I like this team. I just didn't like the obstruction. Cooper nodded. Well, the obstruction is gone. I need an interim operations director, someone who knows where the operational bodies are buried and how to properly document their resurrection. I stared at him. You want me to take Brian's position? I want you to take the job Brian should have been doing. 6-month trial. Title upgrade, significant salary adjustment. Mandate to restructure operations as you see fit. I have one condition, sir. Cooper raised an eyebrow. Already negotiating? Good. No more recognition ceremonies with grocery store cake. If the team performs well, we compensate them properly. Cooper smiled. Agreed. Welcome to leadership, Scott. I walked back to pack up my old desk. The $25 Home Depot card was sitting on my keyboard. I found Ashley in the break room. Is everything going to be okay? Negative, I said. We're better than okay. I held out the card. Here, go build yourself something. Consider it a signing bonus. Really? But wasn't that your anniversary gift? It's not a gift, I said. It's a relic from a previous administration. I walked back toward my new office. I sat down in the big chair and started typing. To all staff. From Scott Williams, Interim Operations Director. Subject, new standard operating procedures. The bridge didn't burn down. I just demolished the toll booth. And now, traffic was finally moving. So that's how I turned a $25 insult into a promotion and exposed 15 years of operational fraud. Document everything, maintain your integrity, and never underestimate someone who knows where the real files are kept. Semper Fi.